Hey everyone. Hello. It is Irene Lyon here. Welcome to this live stream, or welcome to the recording. I'm going to make sure that everything is set. I'm going to see the chat here. It looks like we've got it going. Hello to everyone in there. I am here. So I'm just going to confirm we're good, and then we'll get started. So first of all, if you are getting me live right now, let me know where you are from, where you are in the world, and are you a new person here? Are you a 21-day nervous system tune-up member? Are you an alumni? How long have you been following this work? Why are you here? Let me know just what's going on in your world and why you want to learn about this information. I've got my chat below me, so I'm starting to see some things come on in. I will have in the background some of my team answering questions to the best of their ability. So let's see here. We've got Cambridge, UK, Wisconsin, Netherlands, Winnipeg. We've got the peg in the house. Denmark, 21-dayer. Canada, Ontario, SBSM alum, hello. Germany, 21-day tune-up member, someone who's living with and wanting to work on healing chronic depression, anxiety. Bristol, hello. You are new. Slovenia, 21-day tune-up member of 2 years. Where is Seth? Seth is in another room in this house, and he's going to be helping us with the chat. Don't worry, he's around. He'll be joining me for a few other calls this week. We're going to do one on dysregulation and parenting and kiddos. He's also going to join me for a special 21-day tune-up member call. So if you are a 21-day tune-up member, we're going to do a special Zoom this week. We'll pop a link below with all of the live events. We'll put that in there, and he'll join me there. All right. Oregon, hello. France, San Diego, Sweden, Metro Detroit. I'll just silence my phone here. Drop-in classes, awesome. All right. Tacoma, Washington, hello. Another Netherlander. All right. India, hello. Okay, I'm gonna have a little water and then we'll get going. So for those super new here, my name is Irene. For those that are here and you've been here for a long time, bear with me as I do a little introduction to all our new members. So my name is Irene Lyon. I have been doing this work, this nervous system healing work, for 20-ish years, hardcore for about 15, but I've been in the health, wellness, nutrition, fitness, exercise science, mind-body world for, hard to believe, but about 25 years. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. And I do have training. So I want to start with that. I have got significant training in the health sciences, biomedical sciences, exercise sciences, but also mind-body world, such as the Feldenkrais method. The Feldenkrais method, this is a very sophisticated form of mind-body rewiring work. I am also trained in somatic experiencing. And as I say these things, let me know in the chat if you've heard of these things, if you've practiced these things. I'd like to see where you are on this journey. So for instance, have you dabbled with the somatic healing arts? Have you gone to a Feldenkrais class? Do you do therapy? Are you into yoga? What kind of things do you do currently for your healing? So in addition to Feldenkrais, I'm also trained in something called somatic experiencing. This is the work of Dr. Peter Levine. He is still alive and teaching to this day. And I was fortunate enough to learn via him through master classes and also his core curriculum. So this work came into my world in 2008, and it completely shifted everything. I've also trained under someone named Kathy Kane and Stephen Terrell. And this work really gets into early trauma, developmental trauma, how we store dysregulation in our bodies, in our tissues. So if you want more of my credentials, you can see that stuff on my site. I'll leave my personal stories out for now. Now, I was in private practice back in 2004 to 2008. And then I realized I'm missing something. And that's when I got the trauma piece on board. That's when I realized I need to understand how our nervous system gets stuck, how it essentially traps us in what's called fight, flight, and freeze. And what's important to understand is we need fight, flight, and freeze. So pay attention to that. And maybe if you're taking notes, write that down. It is essential for us to have fight, flight, and freeze. The trouble with us lovely humans is this higher brain and our conditioning and our social world, it makes it such that we keep trapped in the fight, flight, and freeze. And this leads to a whole host of problems that I will not name completely now, other than to say the classic things that so many of us struggle with. Someone mentioned anxiety, depression, chronic illness, relational troubles, autoimmune troubles, pain, tension, sabotage, trouble sleeping, insomnia, tremors, restless leg, tics, so many things that us humans are living with and wanting to heal are a result of fight, flight, and freeze being stuck on for way too damn long. So that is like, if you come away with anything today educationally, remember that nugget. So I got into this healing work and I realized something is missing. It was this piece that I just mentioned to you, because I would be working with people in the fitness industry, in the health industry, teaching them really good movement, good practices, and they were still struggling. So I got into all this stuff. I started practicing. I started working with people one-on-one with their traumas, with their dysregulations. And I don't know, I was maybe 3, 4, 5 years into really hardcore full-time practice. And what I found, everyone, is that I was saying the same thing over and over again to my clients. I was teaching them literally with paper and pen how the nervous system works, with graphs, with examples, with analogies. I was needing to teach them how their physiology works. And the reason why that was so important, it was so important because our nervous system doesn't have a linear mind. In other words, it can be one way, one day, and a completely different way, a completely different way another day. And if we don't understand the intricacies of how fight, flight, and freeze cycle and how they affect our organs, our tissues, our brain, our relationships, we're going to A, think that we're going crazy, and B, think that we're not getting anywhere. And so it is so important for us to understand the theory, the education. So I taught this to my clients. I realized I really need to put this online. I'm just gonna have a drink of water. So put this stuff online in a way that my clients could access this stuff. Then I started making homework assignments, which sometimes the word homework, people don't like that, but it's just what you do at home to work on yourself. I would record audio lessons, audio exercises. They would do them at home. Believe it or not, they were on CD. Remember CDs? And they would listen and they would do and they would follow. And I would say, please do this at least once a day. The reason why this was so important was because it wasn't enough to see me just for 1 hour a week. It's the same reason, listen very carefully to this. I'm going to bring in a developmental piece, a human developmental piece. When we're a baby or when you're raising a baby, would you hold and attune to that baby? I want to hear yes or no from folks. Would you hold and attune to them for 1 hour a week? And as you think about that, I'm going to close my window because I keep hearing a plane buzzing above my head. So 2 seconds. So the question is, if you had a newborn baby, would you only hold and attune to them for 1 hour a week? And then the rest of the week, you wouldn't pay any attention to them? Let me know. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of obvious. No. Even those of us who aren't parents know that this is not how you would treat a newborn baby. It's the same reason you wouldn't do that with a newborn puppy or kitten. It's the same reason a mother bear isn't going to have her cub only with her for 1 hour a week. Now, the reason I'm giving you this long introduction to what Smartbody SmartMind is and why you should pay attention to it is because the model of me when I was in private practice of just working with someone once a week for 1 hour, it was not enough to help them learn how to regulate and restore regulation and heal trauma to their nervous system. It was not enough. And so because of this, because we are literally needing to relearn how to be with our body, and for some of us, the first time ever when we get into this work, we are connecting with our body in a way that we've never even considered. We can't just do it with a practitioner. Now, there's nothing wrong with private work. There's nothing wrong with therapy. There's nothing wrong with going and getting body work, these sorts of things. But the trouble is we need to immerse in this learning, especially at the beginning, a lot. The same way, again, newborn baby example, a newborn baby needs so much attention, especially for the first 3 years of their life into being a toddler. They do not have full regulation on board. They don't know how to do the things that you and I know how to do, walk, talk, feed ourselves, move through the world. They need to learn this. So the reason why I put my work online was it was clear to me in private practice, even though, yes, we were getting good stuff done in private practice, us humans at this day and age, currently, we need way, way more information and more practice than what you can get 1 hour a week via practitioner. Again, I want to be clear, nothing wrong with working with a practitioner, but even a practitioner can't teach you the level of stuff that myself and my team have found is super, super duper important for true regulation and healing to happen. So I wanted to start with that idea for those who are completely new here and you're wondering how an online course, an online program can help you not only learn how to heal the things that you are knowing you want to heal, but restore deep, deep regulation to your system. So I'm going to park that piece for a moment. I hope that this little story makes sense. Let me know in the comments. Do you see where I'm going with this? Do you see how it isn't enough to just do one little bit a week? So Smartbody SmartMind was developed because I wanted to put all this information into a course. I like to call it a curriculum, so that you, the person who really wants to become, I like to say, become your own medicine. Recently, I've been loving the term scholar, become your own scholar of your body, become so understanding and aware of yourself and all of the intricacies so that you know exactly what's going on, why certain things going on, and what to do when there might be intensity in your body, when you might feel panic, when you might feel pain, when you might have an accident that happens and you then know what to do so that you don't trap that survival stress I was mentioning at the top of the call. So what is Smartbody SmartMind? I'm going to go through some nuts and bolts. Basically, Smartbody SmartMind is an online program. It's currently open for registration right now. So if you're listening to this on the 12th of September, or anywhere between the 12th of September and the 19th of September, we are opening registration to new members. We typically only do this at set times throughout the year. Now is one of those times, and then we typically run again February-ish, somewhere after the new year. That's the first thing you need to know. The second thing you need to know, obviously it is a paid course. It is just under $2,000 US, so $1,997 for a one-time pay, or 12 payments of $197. Now, if you're a 21-day tune-up member, which many of you are, you do get your 21-day tuition, which is just under $300 off of the tuition. So if you have done the 21 days, even if you did the 21 days like 6 years ago, you still get this, we can call it a rebate discount. The reason why is because the information in 21 days has been curated from Smartbody SmartMind. Now, a lot of times people ask, what's the difference? I'm not going to get into that right just this second, but if you have that question, let me know and I'll answer it to the best of my ability today. But we also have that on an FAQ page on the site. I'll have a little more water. Okay. So the cost of SBSM is a one-time fee. One of the primary questions people ask, Irene, what if I can't do the program in 12 weeks? I say I have never met anyone do the program in 12 weeks. Even my most senior colleagues and peers, because yes, I have senior colleagues and peers who have gone through this program, even though they have more training than me. So that's saying a lot. They've gone through this program and even they have not gone through all of the curriculum in the 12 weeks. That isn't to scare you. It's just to say that there's a lot in there. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of exercises. There's lots of bonuses. There's a lot of material to go through. And some people move at a different pace. And so we do go through in an orchestrated way throughout the 12 weeks. However, you go at your own pace. And I can say right now that learning how to go at your own pace is a whole world of learning in itself. It will challenge you in a good way to listen to your limits, your boundaries, when you need to rest, when you might need to push a little bit. And just that in itself, engaging with the learning curriculum in a healthier way with guidance and support, and I'll talk about what that is in a second, that also rewires your nervous system. Because again, let me know in the comments, who here hated school? Who here did not like being in elementary school, high school, college? It was stressful. It was not creative. It forced you into survival because you had to keep up and you had to perform. This is a way that many of us, and myself included, we were in some ways indoctrinated into being good students and good pupils. And if you weren't good at the material, you essentially, people would say you failed, quote unquote. But we know that's not true. So part of this process in SBSM, it's more than just learning about the nervous system and learning how to be with your body. It is that, and it is so much more. You will come out of this curriculum and this program, I believe, loving to learn. You will relearn how to learn. This is a big part of what I was taught when I studied the Feldenkrais method, which is what is within Smartbody SmartMind. So I'll lead into that next piece, which is the program is not just about somatic experiencing. It is not just about Feldenkrais, and it is not just about early trauma. It is all of those three things together in one. And I do believe, and many of my peers, colleagues, and students have said they think that is why this curriculum, it's a learning curriculum. It's not therapy. Got to be very clear here. You are teaching yourself and learning via our materials, via my materials. But we think the reason it is so potent, and it has these three powerful methodologies into one. And as we know, humans can't heal and learn just with one thing or one way. We need many different ways to bring information in. So yes, people are saying here, school caused tons of survival stress, freeze, fear, hated it. Right. So no wonder why we struggle to learn about ourselves, because our learning experiences at the beginning were so negative and so traumatic. Right. So that's another thing I wanted to say. Learning is super important, and this curriculum is about learning. It is education. So the core curriculum would be education. We have training videos that I have created. They are beautiful slides where I teach you what I call the biology of stress. All of this information is on the website, so you can look at this with more detail. There are neurosensory exercises. This is my form of practice. It is audio. It's not visual. The reason why it's not visual and it's audio is I want you to learn how to feel into your own body. And if you're just watching me, it's not going to help that process. So the neurosensory exercises where you are guided to connect with your body, connect with the environment, connect with touch, with your movement, with sound, with intention, imagination, working with what we call the stress organs. So where the survival physiology gets triggered, namely our adrenals, our brainstem, our gut, also the fascia, the skin, the bone, the muscle, the breath process, everything I'm naming, you learn in SBSM. It isn't just about sitting there and feeling sensation. It's not just about sitting there and feeling our fear response. You are actively participating with your body through my guidance on audio to experience yourself in a different way. If I go back to the baby example, which I mentioned a little while ago, a baby learns through interaction with their caregivers and the environment. So of course, I'm not your mom. I don't want to be, right? And you can't replay what didn't occur when you were young. But what you can do is you can teach yourself through your relationship with yourself and the environment and your own internal physiology. You can reteach yourself how to listen, how to be in your body in this new, dare I say, improved and regulated way. What's interesting, because I've seen some people ask about trauma, certain things for healing trauma, we are working towards creating a few things: foundation, capacity, and regulation of your nervous system. When this comes on board, we start to know more intuitively how to work with our traumas. And it's kind of like a 180-degree shift from what a lot of other, we could say, trauma therapies offer, which is we're going to focus on the trauma and then work with it to try to get a release, or to try to, a common word I hear and I heard recently is we're going to clear that trauma. Personally, it's not that simple. I've seen personally and professionally not that simple. But what does happen, I'm going to take you on a bit of an educational journey here for a second. When we as adults build foundation, solidity, capacity, we could say flow, resiliency, this creates regulation. This creates greater self-awareness of our internal world, better awareness of our outside world, our external world. Because the system wants to heal and wants to be better, it naturally starts to shift. It's kind of cool. And it takes a little time for this to occur. But when you go and listen and read some of our anecdotes and testimonies from our students, they will say things, and I'm going to be really bluntly honest. I had no idea that doing these simple exercises over time would allow me to resolve my intergenerational trauma, would allow me to, these are stories that we've heard, heal this autoimmune condition, this fibromyalgia, find the love of my life, get rid of toxic people in my life, find a new career. recently, one of our students, her name is Gloria, she shared this on Instagram. So sweet. From Scotland. I'm not sure how old she is, but she's definitely older than me. I'm nearing 50, and she has opened up her own brick and mortar craft store. If you're in Dundee, look for Gloria. She never would have been able to do this. She never in her wildest dreams would have thought that she could not only open up her own store, something that she loves to do, but not be in constant chronic pain. She was in so much pain and sensitization that she couldn't even be outside and feel wind on her face. Her autonomic system was so on hyper alert. It was too painful to be outside. This isn't good for us. We need to be outside. We need to move and walk. So I share that because here's an individual whom I have never met. I've never done personal work with her. None of my colleagues whom give support to all of you in the forums, they've never met her personally. And yet she has healed things that she has never even considered possible to heal by going through Smartbody SmartMind. And then further to that, she now has a fun career and an actual physical store that is helping people be creative in their own lives. So I wanted to share that just to kind of make this loop that by learning, by applying this information in the way that we've put it out, we do start to gain foundation, capacity, regulation of the nervous system, and then in turn, this is what starts to heal our dysregulation. This is what starts to heal our traumas. Now, nowhere at all in the course do we ask you, what is your trauma? I want you to list all of your traumas. Now, if you want to tell us in the introduction threads, which we have, where you can communicate with other members and us, you are free to, say, this is what I experienced. This is the things, these are the things, but we never say we need to know because we don't need to know. So that's another, I think, hint to how powerful this curriculum is that it is restoring your regulation. And if we go back to the baby, when a newborn baby grows into a toddler, into a child, into a teenager, in a way that has connection, safety, regulation, foundation, their ability to handle stress and heal traumas is so much faster because they have self-regulation on board. So many of us didn't get that growing up. So we're learning it now as adults, but it's the same thing. When you treat yourself in a way that is respectful, where you are allowing your biological impulses to move through and all the things that we teach, you gain that regulation. So I hope this is making sense. I'm going to go into support. So I'm going to keep on my list here. So I've mentioned the curriculum is formed via the educational elements, training calls with me. So I teach training calls, 9 of them over the 12 weeks, live on Zoom. You get handouts, you fill in blanks, I teach. There's also the biology of stress videos, which are robust training videos that really teach you about the biology of stress. We dive deep. It's not just, this is the parasympathetic, this is the sympathetic. We go into the depths of the vagus nerve. We go into primary wiring. We go into how we trap information in our body and what's needed to move it out. So much stuff is in there. Neurosensory exercises, that's the practical component. You get those every single week that we are live. There are 10 modules in the 12 weeks, 4 lessons per module. Q&A calls. So my husband runs the Q&A calls. I used to do them, but we're sharing the work. And, it's good to learn from different people. So when we have live session, when we're in our we call them labs for 10 weeks, he is doing Q&A calls where he chooses questions that have been submitted and he answers them in a very educational way so that it helps you, the person asking the question, but also everybody there. And I'll add one more piece. It's very important to understand this isn't one-on-one therapy. This isn't consultation. We cannot give you advice for your specific ailments, but I really want to stress how essential it is to, in some ways, get out of our symptom problem mentality and come back to what is going on in my body? What do I have to learn from my body in this experience? And Seth, as well as our moderators who moderate our forums and answer questions, we guide you back to your own learning. We guide you back to how can you relearn this important piece. We might give you an example, a story, a vignette. Maybe try this lesson. Have you reviewed this lesson? I want to be very clear. We cannot do that one-on-one consult. Not to say that that might not be important for some of us. My team is open to doing consults, those that have room in their practice, or there are other somatic practitioners that you can seek out for specific therapeutic consultation, but that is not what Smartbody SmartMind is. But again, don't be scared by that. As I mentioned, the story that I just told you, never connected with this individual, and they've completely shifted their lives from top to bottom, left to right, and all the in-betweens. Okay, gonna go back to my notes here. So support. So we have got a team, we call them moderators, the moderation team. They are colleagues of mine. They are all trained in somatic experiencing, somatic practice. Many are trained in the Feldenkrais method, and some are also counselors and therapists, trained in many different somatic methodologies, and they answer your questions within the forum. So for every single lesson, for every single educational piece, if you have a question around that interaction you have with that lesson, with the education, you pop a question in our forums and you ask and we respond to the best of our ability. There are also general question threads where we have answered already the commonly asked questions. A reminder, this is not the first time we've run this course. Obviously, this is the 14th time. The 14th time we have run this curriculum. So we've been doing this for quite a while. It isn't something that just got created last year or the last couple of years when everything went online. I started putting this stuff online back in 2011. So it's been a while. This is the first online program for working with the nervous system and healing trauma that ever existed. I was the first person that did this stuff. And of course, since then, there's been many other people that have put their trainings online, and that's wonderful. But we've done this quite a few times, and we're all very proud of the curriculum. So that is how you get support. There's a few bonuses and extra resources. So question we often get is, how much movement, so physical movement, does one have to do? And it varies. So all of the lessons are so gentle and slow. The ones I teach, you can do them in your imagination, or you can move a centimeter or an inch or a couple of, it's not physical exercise. So just because my background is in exercise science and sports science, we don't bring any of that into this course. One question that someone asked was around this, and I can say right now, we have had people go through SBSM who have been bedridden. True story, bedridden, not able to move, not able to get out of bed, dependent on others. And after doing the program for an amount of time, they are able to, the technical word is ambulate, but get up, move around, and not be bedbound. So hopefully that gives you an indication of, one can go into this with super low capacity. The key is that you have your brain and your curiosity and your desire to learn and your desire to be well. If one is stuck, I'm going to be really honest, in what we would call victim identification, and you have no interest in learning about yourself, you have no interest in taking ownership for your own physiology. And let's be honest, I have heard horrific, gruesome stories of abuse throughout my career of doing this, things that you don't even want to imagine. And these people get out of feeling like they are a victim to that. They know what happened to them. They have empathy for what occurred, even towards the person. And they are working towards healing their body, because at the end of the day, this is the one thing. Think about this. Our body, our mind, our brain, our nervous system, it really is the one thing we own. And it's the one thing in this entire world that we can control. And that leads me to a little sidebar, which is we live in a world that is super chaotic and unpredictable. Even the weather is chaotic and unpredictable. And this is just part of life. The more solid, the more regulated, the more connected we are to ourselves, the more we can listen to how our stress physiology reacts or doesn't react to certain things, the better off we will be. And I sense that things are going to get a little more crazy and a little more chaotic going forward. And what better way to counteract or have the antidote to that than to work like heck on your system so that you are not pulled into that trauma vortex of what is often going on in the world outside of us, or even in our family systems, right? This doesn't have to be globally. It could be what is occurring in your local community or even in your own household, in your family system. Okay, so support movement. That's what I was talking about. One of the beautiful bonuses of Smartbody SmartMind is one of my colleagues. His name is Ilya Marak. He and I have been working and teaching together since 2016. And up until 2019, we were doing regular workshops in person where he was teaching what's called Qigong, also Tai Chi, and dance. Now, don't be afraid of the word dance. It's not tango or foxtrot or anything like that. It's movement. It's using your body and feeling your movement. And so there are movement lessons that Ilya has pre-recorded. Members love them. And that is one way that you can interact with movement at a little bit more of a higher level. But all of those movement lessons that he teaches that involve Qigong and Tai Chi can be done seated. They do not need to be done standing. So if you are bedridden, if you can only sit, you can still participate in them. So I hope that answers those questions. Okay, I see some other good questions coming in. So I'm going to get to those. I'm going to make sure I've covered everything. So logistically, we're open registration now until next Tuesday. We will not open registration again until February 2024. When you are a member for life. So what that means is that if you want to come back and participate live in the Q&A calls, in listening to Seth teach, in asking questions of our moderation team, if I change the whole course and improve the lessons, which I have done over the years, but if there's added lessons, if there's added trainings, if there's added bonuses, you don't need to pay for those. It is completely complimentary, and you can come back and join for as long as the course is in existence. Even if I'm not around, I hope that the course goes on as long as we need it here on planet Earth. So just know that the investment that you make, while it might seem like a big chunk, consider how much one might spend doing one-on-one work with a practitioner over years. And I can't stress that enough. When I was working with clients, I had seen some people for 4 or 5 years, once a week at, $200-ish a session. If you do the math, once a week over 4 to 5 years, that is a lot of income. That is a lot of resource. Again, I'm not saying that one-on-one work is not important, but what my colleagues have said, those who have worked with Smartbody SmartMind members, especially my husband Seth has said this, because a lot of our colleagues gain their students, their clients via the curriculum. They will say the people that have gone through Smartbody SmartMind, I don't want to say it's easier, because there's still work to be done, but they have a better time, a more efficient, that's the word I'm looking for. The work is more efficient. It's more efficient because they don't have to talk theory. They don't have to waste their time talking about what does sensing mean? Why are you getting me to make this sound? Why do I have to feel my joints? What is this orienting thing? What is freeze, right? What is survival stress? All of that is already in your system and in your brain. So then you go and you work with a practitioner, or heck, a massage therapist or an acupuncturist, or you go learn something, and you can track your physiology. And it means that the work that you do with that practitioner or the learning that you do, it sticks way better. So I want to add that because this will also aid in how you work with other practitioners. Hands down. It will aid you in how you learn. If you're young and you're going into university, or heck, if you're not young and you're going into university, this will help your process for how you engage with your schoolwork, with your housework. This will help you know how to follow instructions so that you can learn how to cook. Oddly, this will help you clean your house better. I know that sounds strange, but when we are more regulated and more aware of our environment, we actually take care of not only ourselves better, but our environment better. And of course, this just ripples out into the world in bigger macro ways, which I do believe when we heal ourselves, we heal everything around us. So I'm going to get to specific questions here. And someone asked, should you begin this work in the midst of recuperating from a serious injury that may require serious surgery with a long recovery? 100%. I actually just had some day surgery a few weeks ago. It was a general anesthesia, and I've had many surgeries in the past. Again, that's all in my bio. But it was probably the first time I went through an actual general anesthesia, not being in freeze and being fully aware of what was going on. And the body likes it when you are aware and alert to what's going on, as opposed to shutting down and just pushing things away. So I needed a lot more time to recover. I needed just different needs afterwards. And the other thing to be aware of, and this, thanks for the question, Sue, is when our autonomic nervous system is in disarray, when it is dysregulated, our immune system is not working properly. Our hormone system isn't working properly. Our reproductive, our digestion, our cardiovascular, our blood flow, nothing is working properly because the system is only concerned about survival. The analogy often we give is, if you have a house that's on fire, what are you going to do? Are you going to dust and tidy up the cushions? No, you're going to put out the fire, or do your best ability to put out the fire. So if you think about your body, if there is stored survival stress inside, and I can guarantee you, if one hasn't dove into this deeper work, there will be. I did years of physical training, exercise training, even Feldenkrais training. I even did tons of somatic work, and I still had deep survival stress in my system up until just a few years ago. So there's no shame in admitting, oh, Jesus, yes, I think I do have survival stress in my system. But what it does is it hinders our healing process. So I would suggest, if one can, this is a beautiful adjunct to when someone is going through a recovery process, a rehab process, because it will also reteach you how to listen to your body so you can recover differently. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to have a little more water here. Okay, we still got lots of time. I'm going to go to the questions that we have popped here. Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks to my team who are keeping things spick and span in the comments. And if Seth is answering some things, thank you as well. This question is from Katrin. I'll have a little more water. I am 10 months in with an SE practitioner, and I've done some Feldenkrais, thinking maybe it could be helpful to do SBSM alongside of this. 100%. I've already kind of alluded to that. Again, we can do great work with a practitioner. You don't want to know how many sessions I have done with a somatic experiencing practitioner, with various therapists, body workers. It's something that I enjoy doing, and I can, so I will. But what you will learn, if I think about this, if I had had Smartbody SmartMind when I was in my mid-20s, or heck, in my early 30s, I have no doubt that my capacities to have gotten out of freeze before my 40s would have completely happened. I'm going to be 48 in November, and my freeze really didn't start getting unlocked in a deep, deep way until about 8 years ago. And it only really shifted deeply in the last few years, and really just in the last year. Now, if I had done my own course before, or even in conjunction with my SE training, I know for certain things would have been, I would think, a little faster at healing. That's my hunch. So 100% doing this alongside would be wonderful. Can you cure, the person has in quotes, autoimmune if you regulate your nervous system? Okay, so I'm going to put in quotes, yes. Now, I can't make guarantees for everyone, but we do have people within our membership. One person to listen to, we could share with you Selden's long form interview. She's a SBSM alumni. I think it was just last year that I interviewed her. She was diagnosed with lupus well into her 40s, but she had had trauma from an early age, struggled her whole life with fatigue, shutdown, chronic illness, and she will say it's gone. She is no longer suffering from what the medical establishment would consider an autoimmune disorder. Now, the other interesting thing that she says in this video, and there are other people that have said this more recently, people will say, and this might seem a little crazy, but there is no such thing as an autoimmune disease, in that the body would never attack itself, because that's how they classify autoimmune. From my perspective, the body isn't attacking itself. The body is struggling with survival stress, and it's expressing symptoms, pain, inflammation, neurological conditions, because the system is in survival stress. It goes back to that example of the house burning down. The house is burning down. You're not going to take care of the immune system. You're not going to take care of the basic processes so that the cellular functions can thrive and shine and be healthy. And we know this through some of the key research. It's epidemiological, but it's been shown across thousands of numbers, namely the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Experiences study. When there is high levels of stress early on in life, we call these adverse events. And it doesn't have to just be abuse from a physical or sexual point of view. It can be emotional trauma, verbal trauma, being born preemie, surgical trauma, a near-death experience when you're young. This puts your system into deep survival. Immobilization, shutdown, what we call going into the dorsal tone of the parasympathetic. A little jargony, but these are important terms. And what happens is the system just literally stops taking care of itself. So to answer this again, yes, we've seen people shift out of their autoimmune conditions and into greater regulation. Everyone is different, however. Everyone has a different history, a different genetic predisposition. Everyone is living in different situations, which leads me to one other thing. It is important, as you do this work, that you start to realize how your relationships are, because it is very difficult. I'll go back to the house example. So let's just say your house is burning down. Obviously, this is a metaphor. And you put it out. But let's just say you have someone in the house that likes lighting fires, and they just keep they keep lighting things on fire, and then you have to keep putting it out. That is analogous to living with someone who constantly is putting you into survival stress, whom you feel you have to put up a wall against, or you have to hide yourself. The one key thing with this work is to really do it, you have to be fucking authentic. You have to be raw and real with yourself. And if you are living with another person, it could be a spouse, it could be a sibling, it could be a parent, and they have no interest in your authenticity and in you expressing yourself, even if you are doing this work in peace, in the silence of your room, and they don't know about it, you will hinder your development and your capacity. So I'm not saying just go off and leave and break your relationships, but what you will find is as you become more vital in your nervous system, and as you start to express your emotions, express your healthy aggression, have a bit more exuberance and a bit more life, those around you might not like that, and they will do things to sabotage your growth. So very important for me to say that, because there'll be lots of people listening to this who, you're not in a great relationship or you're not in a great job, and that's fine. We've all been there. The question is when the time comes, how will you have the bravery to gather your resources and literally create your own arc, right? To ensure that you get out, and you find your own sovereignty, your own peace, your own freedom, so that the work that you have done can just flower, right? It can really become solid and secure. I'm going to answer this question in a very general way. Someone asks, what do you think of ketamine therapy for trauma? So we could add in all the other psychedelics, plant medicines, psilocybin, all the things that people are doing right now to help facilitate healing of the nervous system. Obviously, there can be a time and a place for these things, but what I've seen is we go into them looking for a quick fix. And the thing that I've heard time and time again, and this isn't just with pharmaceuticals or plant medicines, what I've found, even people who go to breathwork workshops, or they go to dance retreats, or they go to some empowerment weekend, and they get blown out of the water because they don't know how to be in their system. So I personally do not recommend anything that is, we could say, an altered substance or an imposed cathartic practice until one has enough foundation and capacity to handle intense sensation and intense emotion. Because what these things will do is they will unlock a gold mine of gremlins and traumas and sensations from not just this lifetime, but past lives, generational trauma, our ancestors' trauma. And if we are not ready to hold it all, I've seen people crumble. I've seen people, know of people who have gone into psychosis. I actually did an interview with a gentleman by the name of Juan Pablo. It's on my site. He talks openly about his horrific experience with ayahuasca. And it doesn't mean that these medicines aren't useful in certain contexts, but this is what we have to realize. We often don't realize, as humans living in this world, how conditioned and how socialized we have become and how repressed we are. And the freeze and collapse response, this is part of survival stress, is so crafty and it is so strong, and it requires a lot of energy. And it will hide stuff from us that we have never even considered. And so what often occurs or has occurred is stuff will come up and it will just be too much for us to handle, as I mentioned. But what can also occur if we're not regulated enough and the word would be tether ourselves to the here and now, is we can think we're getting better with these medicines, but we're actually fragmenting ourselves. It's like shards of ourselves are being cut off, and it might feel light and easy, but it's also us being disconnected and dissociated. So this is where I think we kind of have to really understand, what would it be like to spend a year or two going back to the basics the way you would need to as if you were a baby, right? The way you were as an infant, the care, the constant nurturing, following the impulse, eating when you're hungry, resting when you're tired, moving when you have energy, reconnecting with the environment without the added elements. And then someone, when they've gotten to a certain point, they might be like, you know what, I think I would like to try something with consciousness and intention, and they go into it with intention for something very specific. It might make it much more easier. It might make it such that that experience can be integrated. So from my experience in meeting many people who have gone through various medicines and ceremonies, again, there's a time and a place, but more often than not, I find that it fragments and dissociates folks, and it's because there hasn't been enough preparation. It's the same with meditation. Meditation can fragment us immensely without even realizing it, and we are not connected to ourselves. We're in what we would call a spiritual bypass. So there's a question here about 21 days versus SBSM. I'm going to just answer more generally. Smartbody SmartMind is the course for you if you know there is early developmental traumas. And I'm going to be really bloody honest. I haven't met anybody yet who hasn't had some kind of early developmental in utero trauma. Even the way we birth babies in hospitals is traumatic. Whether it is cutting the umbilical cord way too soon, whether it is not allowing baby to be with mom, putting clothing on babies right as soon as they get out, the way in which we might use forces, forceps, vacuums, C-sections. Now, of course, this is all wonderful medicine that helps keep babies alive, right? Humans alive, but it also comes at a cost of adding stress and dysregulation to the system. And then just the general way that we raise kids with education and sit still, and children should be seen and not heard. Don't be angry. You know, we're not angry in this family. It's okay to cry, but it's not okay to do this. Eat all your vegetables, or else you're not going to get to play after dinner. These things are actually jarring, and if done over time, traumatic to the system. So I created Smartbody SmartMind first. The 21-day course was created so that there would be something for people to work on if they found me, they found my work when we weren't in session for SBSM. So that's kind of the history of how SBSM was created first. And then we added in the 21 days so that people could just start with a little bit or start when we are not in enrollment to SBSM. My suggestion is always, if someone can start with SBSM, I suggest that, because it is also paced in a different way. There are more slower exercises in SBSM. It does hold a arc of gaining resources, capacity, foundation in a much more titrated way. Not to say that you cannot titrate your way through the 21 days by taking it slow, and many people do that. But if you're here and you're wanting to do this work and you're here when we have registration open, then I suggest SBSM. Interesting question. A lot of high endurance athletes experience depression. Yes, they do. Is that due to withdrawals from high level of endorphins of excessive physical activity? I definitely think that can be a portion of it. The other thing is, when you are a high endurance athlete, I was definitely an athlete in my younger years with more extreme sport. To perform at that level, you have to shut a portion of you down. If I just think about, getting up at 4 a.m. to go to the ice arena, which I did, mothers that bring their kids to hockey at 11 p.m. at night when they should be well asleep, gymnasts that train God only knows how many hours a day, especially females who will not get their menstrual cycles until they're in their 20s, because there's no way that their system can hold a baby because they have no fat on their bodies, right? Pain, the amount of times that there's an injury and we feel it, but we go into shutdown and freeze. And so what I've seen, because I worked in a ski town where this was rampant, I actually had to leave the place I lived because I couldn't do this somatic work in that town because nobody was interested. Nobody wanted to pause, to rest, to feel their emotions long enough, because they had to go ski a steep chute, or they had to go mountain biking, or they had to go fly off of a mountain. These are all things that I did. And so when we stop this, yes, there's the endorphins. And yes, we need to move. Exercise is super important. But the level that I think you're talking about is a completely different level that is not, in my opinion, functional, right? If we think about out in the wild, if back in the day, we might run if we're being chased by something, but we either get eaten or we get away and then we stop running. If we think about marathons, ultra endurance marathons, people are going for, 40 plus kilometers to 100 kilometers. And I've worked with these people, and man, oh man, their bodies are toasted. Watch the Tony Hawk documentary if you know who Tony Hawk is. While it's a great documentary, so good of his life into skateboarding, towards the end, you see his mental unwellness, you see his physical pain, all the concussions. He has to shut down because you cannot function if you're aware of all of that internal pain, and so you repress it. Okay. Does the 21-day course give you enough to begin healing chronic illness? 100%. We have many people that start with 21 days. They work with that for a few months, for a year, and then they enter into SBSM. 100%. Yeah, in case anyone's wondering, we did answer this in the chat. My training calls fall on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Seth's Q&A calls fall on Thursdays at either 10 or 3 p.m. This is all Pacific time. So that's when they're live. But what I really want to stress upon everyone here is do not make that your decision. So if you can't make them live, that's okay. First of all, total transparency, I am not answering questions during the training calls, and Seth is not really interacting in the chat. We do have someone moderating the chat for quick questions that might come in, but it is not an interactive situation. We're just showing up live in those moments. Most of the membership aren't in Pacific time, or they're working, or they're with kids, or they're sleeping because they're down under, or they're in a different part of the world. So I would say that probably close to 80% of the people that go through the training calls and Q&A calls are listening afterwards or watching the video afterwards. I have a question for Irene regarding EMDR and the compatibility with SBSM. So they're 100% compatible in that SBSM is not a replacement for other therapies. What I will say from experience of people who have done EMDR is they start to find that it's actually too intense, especially for working with early trauma, developmental trauma. Now, there's some people that might argue with me around that, and that's fine. I'm just going through my own personal experience, experiencing EMDR and hearing from others who start to see that EMDR is actually pushing them to override what's going on in their body. And what we start to see in SBSM, what a person starts to learn, is how little, this is so important, guys, how little a stimulus, how little a new input is all you need. The tiniest bit of a drop of a touch or a movement or a noticing. There's a lesson in SBSM where we work with the joints of the body. It's super short and it's so subtle. And I would say 9.9 times out of 10, members will write in, how the heck is just touching my wrist bringing up tears and grief and shame, all these things. And it's the subtlety. It's the subtlety that we're going into SBSM's material with that is very different than some of the bigger brain retraining practices. Again, it depends on the person. I do know that EMDR is a wonderful methodology for shock traumas when there's a bit more regulation on board. And Bessel van der Kolk talks about this in his book, The Body Keeps a Score. So you've got to tune into your own system and listen to what makes sense for you. And you might find that as you do more of the subtle exercises, the bigger ones are less needed. I hope that makes sense. Question, do you think you can heal from an abusive relationship? 100%. We definitely can. And it comes back to what I mentioned a little while ago, that we are not still in that relationship and that we are interested in, of course, no longer being in any victim identification mode. The next part of the question, both understanding that there are trauma triggers that happen, is there hope that they could heal together? So two people in relationship can 100% heal together, but both people have to be looking in the same direction. And this is where the rubber kind of meets the road. If one person is so open to learning and getting rid of that victim mode that I've mentioned, and they're willing on being uncomfortable and trying new things and it being a bit messy and all the things, and their partner has zero interest in breaking free of that, that will be very difficult. But if you have two people who know they've got stuff to work with and they know, oh my gosh, I'm getting triggered and this isn't him or her, this is me. But then the other person has to go, oh, I can't take this personally. Because what happens is when we take things personally, it then can create more trauma triggers. So the key is that both people are doing their own individual work, and you are working in relationship together to work towards a common goal of greater regulation and being together in a way that isn't filled with survival stress. This makes me think of parents. If you're trying to parent and raise little people and your partner is not in alignment with your views on natural connection and regulation and attunement, and they're more militaristic and more authoritarian and more we have to punish and we have to spank and we have to leave them to cry themselves to sleep and, you know, be a big boy, be a big girl. And if you want to have a little more of a nurturing capacity, that's going to also cause friction. So this is also for parents. It's very difficult for two parents to be with a child when they have completely different views of how to raise babies. And there is a right way to raise a baby. I've done videos on this before. We need that care and connection that every other mammal in the world gets. And yet, for some reason, us humans, we forget that we're mammals. And so we impose these conditions, a culture, societal rules on our kids. And then, of course, those kids become us. And that's why we're here learning this stuff. So for the parents here, so important if you're here learning this stuff to realize it actually can be quite simple when we have this nervous system on board, this nervous system lens, and we gain regulation as the caregivers. My husband and I, Seth and I, are going to do a talk about this soon. where we will speak about dysregulation and parenting, because it is a huge topic and there's so much confusion about it, but it actually doesn't have to be confusing. Okay. Brooke asks, have you seen this help people doing what needs to be done to create their business? Yes, I just had an example where I mentioned Gloria, one of our members, whom went from literally not being able to go outside due to neurological pain to now owning a brick and mortar business in Dundee, Scotland, craft store with like inventory and classes and teaching. So yes, people, I know many colleagues, personal friends who've gone through Smartbody SmartMind, and they have more focused, direct intention on what needs to be done. There's less procrastination, there's less sabotage. They learn how to pace themselves so they don't burn out. They know how to set boundaries, how to ask for help, those sorts of things. So yeah, and then you said, I feel like a freeze response has been a major part in creating things I intend. Yes, freeze will stop us. That's its job, right? Seems simple, but when we have got survival stress in us and the freeze response is like got its claws in us, it is going to hold us back. The interesting thing is there's something called functional freeze. Functional freeze is such that we are frozen from feeling the fact that we are on the road to burnout or we're doing too much. This was me. And functional freeze means we're pushing, but we have no friggin' clue how exhausted we are or how much we're overriding. It means that we're sitting at our computer and we haven't gotten up to like go to the bathroom in 5 hours or had a drink of water or had any food. And we're ignoring our body's signals for nourishment, for movement, all these things. So it can go kind of both ways, which is interesting. What do I think about internal family systems method? I don't have a lot to say because I haven't practiced it myself. I have many colleagues who have, and they love it. What I've also heard, and this is kind of a common thing, people will say, I've done SE, I've done IFS, I've done EMDR, I've done these treatments. And again, this is just their words, not mine. It wasn't until Smartbody SmartMind brought all these things together that this other layer of healing and regulation came into place. So similar to how one might go see a body worker, get some acupuncture, go to a dance class, I don't think there's anything wrong with dabbling with any kind of therapy. The question is it helping you? Right? Is it adding something to what you need to uncover? A lot of times we'll just get into the habit of doing the same thing because that's just what we do. It's like going to the gym and people just do the same thing over and over again. And while it maintains them, it doesn't actually improve their capacity and strength and resiliency. So it's kind of like that with anything is it adding and is it increasing incrementally your regulation capacity, or is it not necessary? And those are questions that I can't answer. You'd have to answer that yourself. All right. Someone says they're afraid of not being able to complete the program. Yes, you and everyone else. So this is common. This comes back to our conditioning that we have to get everything done on the test or we fail. There are some people who have been part of SBSM and they haven't completed all of it and they're doing wonderfully. So again, this is this industrialized education factory worker mentality that if I don't get all the things right, if I don't get all the things in place, if I don't perfect everything, I will basically never heal. And that's not true. There are people who will spend 6 months on the first week of the training material, and they will shift so much just by applying those principles over and over and over again. And then the flip side, I've talked to some members who have tried to be the good student, And they will push and push and push to be the good student, but they'll override. They'll do too much. They don't realize it, and they've missed opportunities to heal. They've missed opportunities to just be with their body and just follow impulse and orient for like a month, right? And this is what a lot of people will do, and then they'll come back. So I'm not giving out gold stars. I'm not giving out pats on the back. No one is going to say, good job, you completed this thing. We're also not going to say, shame on you, you didn't complete this thing. There is a sacred neutrality. There's a sacred neutrality to this work. Just like we should never say to a baby, how dare you? You're not talking yet. And yet how many of us do that, right? We gather these milestones and we say, so-and-so should be standing by this age, doing this by this age, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been programmed without even realizing it to assume we have to get to a certain point. You are your own person. You are your own experiment. And it's not about completing the program. It's about working through it at your own pace, learning and applying, and then just repeating that over and over and over again. How do I know if something is a hindrance for my healing, like where I live or my job? Well, I'm going to say one thing. If you're asking that question, there's a potential that there's some truth to what you're asking because you're putting it out there. But what will happen is if you and when you become more connected to yourself, whether through my program or some other work that you might do, you'll know because your system just won't, it'll keep getting pushed back, right? So this is something that just it takes time. It takes time for us to figure out these things. We might not even know we're in a hindering relationship or job because we're in so much damn shutdown. We're in so much freeze that we're not aware. It's like when we're in freeze, we also don't notice muscle tensions. We don't notice ignoring body signals. And so when we start to come out of freeze, we actually might start to feel more pain. This is what happened with me. We might start to feel what we would call anxiety, which is essentially the fight flight under the freeze that's finally going, oh my gosh, finally you've worked on yourself enough so that I don't have to hold all this inside. So sometimes we won't uncover these things until we start the work. Yes, there is definitely a $300 discount for the 21-day students. You should be getting our specific emails that gives you the link for that. So if you're not seeing your emails with a specific link, email us to support. Oh, I just answered your question, Ian. Sorry to hear that. You had a failed surgery on your leg last year and it has left you immobilized. So I always feel a need to dissociate from the pain. I'm scared that SBSM will force me to face the pain. Yes. And we don't want to keep that pain inside. Now, of course, there's the physical pain. But the interesting thing is when we have more capacity in our body, this is actually a great question to teach a little of the intricacies of SBSM. So as we do this work, we dive into parts of our organs, levels of our body that we never would have considered. And when we have more capacity on board and we can feel literally head to toe in all the three-dimensionality, and we can connect with the environment, and we can do something called resource, and we can do something called pendulate away from the body. This isn't dissociating. The pain can lessen because we're not just focused on it. And so a big part of working with intense acute pain is the ability to not distract, but to shift our focus to something else. And oddly, that can help to mitigate and lessen the pain. The other thing that starts to occur, especially when there's been surgery, is being stuck still in anesthesia states. This is a real thing. Those can start to lift and shift so that our system isn't in shock. And so the key is, my sense is, there's probably still quite a bit of shock in your system, a shit ton of anger. I'm going to be really honest, because a surgery that doesn't go well is a big hit, right? And so grieving, but also allowing anger to come out in a way that is controlled and contained. Because chances are, if a lot of that is still inside, the grief, the anger, the pain, the sadness, the helplessness, that stuffs our system with stress. And then that can exacerbate the pain because we're just holding so much inside, right? One of my analogies, it's called the swimming pool and beach ball analogy. If you haven't heard this, it's on the Healing Trauma video series I have, video number 1. And I talk about this capacity thing. So as I talk about that, I see that image in my mind. So I'd be inclined to have you watch that video. So yes, we're not going to force you. We never force. But slowly, as you build capacity, it allows you to actually connect with the pain and the emotions that might be with it so that they can process, release, and integrate. And I'm going to add one more thing. If that doesn't occur, research would suggest that eventually other things will go wrong. Your digestion will start to be a bit funky. Your immune system will be repressed. Your cardiovascular system will not be the best because there is so much survival stress still in your system. So interestingly enough, the capacity to heal will be improved by doing this regulation work. Can SBSM help with addiction, such as alcoholism? Are there success stories with this? So we don't categorize our success stories by issues, but yes, I do know that people have shifted out of addictive behaviors, addictive, harmful behaviors. And as we know, addiction, we don't see it as a disease. It's a dysregulation of the system, and the system is looking for soothing. It is looking for something to bring it out of survival stress. This is why various substances that many of us use are so necessary in our current world, because we haven't really taught our people how to be apprentices of their body. And there's just been so much darn trauma in family systems that it makes sense that we want to drink away our sorrows, smoke away our sorrows, eat ourselves to the point where we can't feel anything, or the opposite, starve ourselves to the point where we are numbed out. So if we look at, I'll just name things, addictions, phobias, anxieties, these are all things that we've seen people shift. And it comes back to getting to that core regulation and getting it back on board so that we can find energy, but also find calming and regulation without a substance. Hope that answers that question. Hey, I currently feel triggered by physical touch, history of physical abuse in childhood. Does SBSM address things like this in any way? 100%. So again, we're coming back to how to reconnect to self, how to reconnect to our body in a way that is intentional and about nurture and connection and focus and ease. And so there are exercises in SBSM where we are actually bringing our own hands to touch parts of our body, face, arms, joints, diaphragm, these very core places. And so this is one way that we will bring in a stimulus of touch, or even the imagination of touch, into the system. And this isn't something we do on the first day, but we do this as a way to layer in more experience that one might consider to be activating. But then we've taught you up until that point, how can you sense that activation? What memories come up? And when that happens, what is it like to orient? What is it like to make sound? What is it like to reconnect to the here and now? So part of healing these triggers, these overactivations, let's say, these coupled dynamics, is to actually go into them and face them in a way that is, the word we would say is titrated. So slow, intentional with little bits so that the system doesn't get overwhelmed. How do I know if I'm healing and building capacity? Is there a way to measure progress that's subtle so that we don't get discouraged when the outside is still not changing? This comes down to trust, Becky. And I always use the baby example. You hold that baby, you nurture it, you're attuned to it for months and months, and they still don't speak to you. It's like, gosh, doing all the right things. They're still not walking. They're still not feeding themselves. They still can't drive themselves to the grocery store. And I'm just doing the same thing over and over again. But the thing is eventually it happens. And so this is where we have to trust. And again, it's based on our experience through this course. When the laying of these foundations are put in, things do shift. And it's kind of like, it's a simple example, but I'm assuming most of us here brush our teeth. Some of us brush our teeth twice a day, 3 times a day. So when this occurs, we're doing it as upkeep, right? We're doing it because we know it's going to help prevent all the things that go wrong when we don't brush our teeth. So it's similar. When you connect to the outside world, when you connect to your system, when you go through these motions, when you learn, when you stop doing harmful habits, this is building capacity. And this discouragement that you mentioned, my sense is this is, again, our conditioning as humans to want to have an external reward. And we've just been so messed up by these external rewards that we don't know how to sense inside when something is changing. So my hunch is that as you get into the subtle nature of some of this work, you will start to find that you notice things that you've never noticed before. Your cravings shift, your ability to just pause shifts, all these things. I need to pause soon. We're at about 90 minutes here. Someone asked about derealization and depersonalization. 100%. This will help with this. I did a video on this. So if you look up those 2 words and my name, there will be a video that pop up. If you have questions that I haven't gotten to, here's what I suggest. Go to our SBSM site, smartbodysmartmind.com. There's an FAQ page with quite a few questions and answers. See if the question that you have falls into that category. If it doesn't, no worries. Type it in Google. I have so many videos and I've done so many things online that you might be surprised what pops up. Try that. And if that doesn't come up, post your question back here under this video, or send our support team an email and we will get back to you. And give us time. It's busy time. We'll have lots of questions to answer this week, but we will get to as many as we can. I will be doing more Q&As this week. I'm just going to see if there's anything quick that I can answer. Yes, just pop the questions in the comments once this video goes live under the live streams. Oh, this is a good follow-up to the addiction one. I want to stop drugs, Adderall. I was sober for 4 weeks. Now I realize I need small doses to function. Stopping completely would destroy my career. Can I still do trauma work and SBSM? 100%. What you are finding is that you're needing to titrate your way out of these medications, out of these substances. I don't believe that cold turkey is the way to go, where you just rip off the Band-Aid and suffer. I actually think that titration is key. This means small little shifts. And if you're doing the work and SBSM alongside, you will be, just like I answered the question for Ian around the surgery, you will build your capacity to be with the discomfort, and you will learn how to resource yourself to other things that aren't the medications. And then maybe, yeah, you need to go to work. Okay, I'm just going to take a little bit, right? You got to feel that in your own system. But in my opinion, that's a very intelligent and humane way to go about trying to get off of something. And it's the same with any habit we might have, right? So thank you, everybody, for your questions. As I said, we will do our best to get to all of them, but really do look at the FAQ page. Go through our success stories. I know there's a lot there, but you might find something that relates to you. So you have so much time. You have this week to take in, to learn, to get to know what this curriculum is about. As I said, this is the 14th time we've run it. There's a reason why we keep running it, and it keeps being popular these days, and people keep coming back. So our alumni come back, they relearn, they add more, they gain more and more capacity. And that's the good news, is that our capacity is infinite, our healing is infinite. And when we can really learn and go into this from a learning perspective, it shifts everything. So thanks to Bonnie for helping out with the comments. Thanks to my husband, Seth, for also answering some things. And we'll be back with more live calls starting tomorrow. All that information is on the site. Thank you so much, everyone, and we will talk to you later.